Right, there we are. It's working. A little bit later than usual due to Lannister lies. Ah, look at that alliteration. So
Blame Brett,
blame Brett.
right?
Blame
Right.
Brett.
That's the theme for everything these days.
It literally is the theme for everything these days. It is Lannisters as well, a faction that we all know Brett loves. So it's definitely Brett's fault and only ever Brett's fault. I think that's what we can say. It's not at all. It's not at all the fact that I did a Windows update after work and it took forever. Not at all that. Not at all that. Totally, totally the lies and everything that everyone's been saying.
I mean, blame Mickey. Like, is the other go-to? You know, like it's always Mickey's fault.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It is literally my fault. So, anyway, guys. Anyway, we are back. We are here to talk about some Lannisters. Carlo.
Yeah.
Like you did a couple of weeks ago, you left it up to me to kind of talk about free folk. I almost feel like I don't need to be here, right? Because Lannisters is your dealio. This is your child, your baby. Probably not.
I love me some Lannisters.
You do love you some Lannisters.
You know,
that was your first.
That's probably why I'm always so harsh and I don't let Mount and the Rides get used, because that feels like too much favoritism towards my own favored faction.
Yeah, exactly. So
not that discussion's been going round and round and round again.
I know, right? So let's go through. Let's have a little look. Right, I think we should be all good now. So the Lannisters then. Lots to talk about because they revealed. Well, we'll say lots to talk about. Half of the units we've already seen. Some other things that people have discussed and said really interesting. But we'll talk about the tactics cards, of course. First of all, that's the big one, isn't it? And we'll go from there. We will go from there. So, the first tactics
loads
card.
Of things.
The first tactics card is Intrigue and Subterfuge. That's a card I've heard before.
Yeah, it's still there in most of its form. Enemy activates, enemy NCU activates, and they lose all their abilities. Bang, end of, full stop.
Yep. Still
the same. It's turned into, if you control money bags, one enemy combat unit becomes weakened. I think that maybe that kicker is a tiny bit weaker than, off the top of my head, it's been a while since I played Lannisters, actually. What? Off the top of my head, the old one was, if you control crowns, then they discard a tactics card.
I'm going to look this up, because I haven't got a clue.
You double check on that one. But I'm pretty sure that it used to be, if you control crowns, they discard a tactics card.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's specifically a weakened token and not like any token, I would say maybe it's a tiny downgrade. But I feel like with the new tactics card limit hand size, I think that it would be a little bit oppressive to still be discarding tactics cards. I think... I don't know. Can anybody tell me, actually? Have we seen any new cards that discard tactics cards out of people's hand? Or maybe they ditched that as a mechanic because they thought it was a bit oppressive and a bit unfun. Like it's unfun when people just take your stuff off you with no kind of interaction there. So I think it's still pretty powerful card, pretty key and important to them. And NCUs and their abilities can be like incredibly important to the way a turn plays, a faction plays, and a game plan. So yeah, I still think it's a powerful card.
Definitely. I'm turning off for NCU's abilities is always good. Right? It literally is always good. And as we'll turn to see later on, that actually might be very relevant. But we'll see. We will see. All right. So. Second card is a Lannister pays his debts, which is the new version of the on-death mechanic type stuff, and we see. I mean, this is a read this book that's on this card. So target one friendly combat unit, attach it to them until the end of the game. When a friendly infantry or cavalry unit is destroyed, you place an order token, and when you get this order token, the melee attacks gain vicious, and while you control crowns, +1 to hit. Keyword and +1 to hit on condition.
Yeah. On the crowns with the +1, Vicious all the time. 1 token required. We're still looking at poor neutrals and saying, why do they need 2? But anyway, it's not the most powerful we've seen, I don't think, but it's way up there. You know, it's absolutely in there, talking about this is a very important, powerful on-death mechanic. Whereas old Lannister pays his debts was considered a meme. It was considered like, why do Lannisters have such a bad on-death card by comparison to Northrend members, by comparison to everybody else's on-death, seemed so much more influential than Lannister pays his debts. So it's definitely a bump up here, at least in terms of like scaling by comparison to everybody else. They no longer have just the worst on death card. They have a pretty good one now. And Vicious and +1 to hit are really strong mechanics. Not necessarily in line with the rest of the Lannister control. You know, Vicious is there because they are quite they're a very morale based faction. But it's interesting because it is heavily into comeback mechanics, which is what all of these on deaths really should be. So I think it's a great card.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm in agreement here. I think this is absolutely fine. And as on death mechanics go, it's within the realms of what is, I guess, normal at this point. And getting a +1 to hit's never a bad thing. And the Crown's kicker with that is a little bit of a pain, I guess, having to control a zone to get that +1. But as we're going to see as we go later down, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Vicious as a keyword is specifically not very good with the way that Panic has changed. Except with the fact that the way that mechanic is now the Panic mechanic is now manipulatable, Vicious is very useful. And this is actually where I wanted to double down on this kind of idea. I don't think Panic has gone down in value. I think Panic...
I mean, just like across the board, Panic has had its level lowered, but the ways to influence and spike that and make that your core way of dealing damage is still absolutely there. If you're teched for it, if anything, your damage has gone up. If you're not teched for it, it's gone down a little bit. But for those who are teched towards Panic, it is absolutely 100% a very, very viable way to be the majority of your damage. And I don't just mean like an extra little kicker on the end of the attack. You will do more damage out of most of your Panics than you do out of the attacks themselves.
Yes. We love that, don't we, Carlo?
I do. I've never had a problem with it.
The old free folk problem, though, isn't it? It is the old reason that people hate free folk. So.
I used to love. I was sad when they moved away from the taken amount of wounds by the amount you failed your panic test. I was actually really, really on board with that old mechanic, and I actually really liked it. And I liked that it was capped at, like, you know, you could take 6-7 wounds if I managed to make you take a test on 0. You know, like, so I was actually super on board with that, and I thought that it was okay. My opponent's not so much, though, because I'm a long-time Lannister.
Yeah, I was going to say, you played Lannister. I actually prefer it as well. I actually really wish that they'd kept that mechanic. I think they needed to tone it down a little bit. Not necessarily cap the amount that you would take, but perhaps like an artificial cap based on... It's too difficult to implement, but like your morale -2 or something like that. So the most a raider unit could take was 6, and like an average unit could take was 4 or something like that. Because losing... I mean, I remember a time I got hit by a catapult in round 1. And I lost like 4 or 5 guys, and then I crit failed my panic test, and I lost the other half the unit, and that was it, just gone. I lost a unit on the very first turn of the game, and that's just not fun to play against. I don't care what people say competitive wise, it's just not fun.
To be fair though, you know, like if you and 12 of your mates came walking along and then 5 of you got splattered, I'd be off. So
I mean, yeah, if there are literally only 12 of us.
I just was getting warmed up for the battle, getting ready, and then just like a rock landed and killed half of us. I'd be like, nope, I'm out. I'm off.
The thing is, you say
Not
that,
my day.
it's supposed to model more
Fuck
than that,
this.
because it's not like my whole army is like 50, 60 people, is it? It was like, if there's 50 or 60 of us and one person gets shot by an arrow, the majority of the rest of us are still like, oh, cripe. You know? It's obviously the abstract there. Anyway, moving on. Hear me roar. Not hear we roar, that would be a very different kind of take on the card.
Mhm.
It's basically the same but different. It still does a -1 to the roll, and
Yeah.
it's interestingly, and this is the key here, and this is an absolute killer. Okay. When an enemy is performing a morale test before rolling dice, not a panic test.
Yeah, morale or panic. It is quite a big change.
Yep. It is significant, actually. And we'll talk about that in relation to something
And
else
it's
we
going
know.
to force on failure they will suffer 1 wound,
Yep.
or +1 wound if it's a panic.
It's literally just an extra wound if they fail.
Yeah. I actually I haven't worked out yet whether or not the morale matters. I haven't thought of a like really key situation where I think that you want to force 1 wound on a morale test. It does, of course, spread it out so that, you know, if somebody's taking a morale test, say like on those kind of core in mechanics to survive based on a morale test, not a panic test, useful there. Only -1 to the roll. But you're going to have additional -1s for each of their destroyed ranks. So that part, like can stack up quite quickly. I think I would prefer. I think it's a downgrade. I would have preferred to keep the panic token on crowns rather than the bonus wound myself.
Yep.
You know, like this card is about like guaranteeing out of nowhere that you can force somebody to fail a test. To me, it's never been necessarily how much damage you do. Failing a test is normally bad enough. And so, you know, it's a side grade. It's not bad. It's the new way things are. It would be too much if it also still had the panic kicker on crown. But I wanted the old one if I could choose between them. But it's not a big loss.
So for me, I mean, Brett said it in chat there, but the big thing for me is that we know that Sentinel Enforcer has brought Taunt to Lannisters. And I really don't like the idea of a unit of Lannister halberdiers taunting could be up to -6 on the taunt check. Then you're forced to charge them, and then they set for charge and they kill you. And if you're only on 1 rank, it's likely that they'll just obliterate you with the Lannister check, like the Lannister attack back. That's just sounds unpleasant, to be honest. And you know, I agree it's not good.
Okay, but like you can't sit here 1 week, Mickey, and tell everybody that Taunt's an absolute meme that is crap and nobody wants it, and then all of a sudden you're like, but oh my god, with this card, like,
completely agree.
Yeah, okay, this card could make Taunt not shite.
That's exactly
it. Doesn't mean that Taunt's good.
Exactly.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to magically make Taunt into a really good ability. It's going to make it playable.
I think the significant difference here is it turns Taunt from a meme ability into an ability that you actually want, because you can use the big thing. Taunt is better in Lannisters anyway, because when you attack a Lannister, most of the Lannister units, there's a payback mechanic. There's actually there is a problem that comes when you attack the unit. Thens, give a shit if I attack Thens. There's no there is no mechanic in which you do damage to me in the return. Whereas if you give anything with return damage Taunt, it already makes Taunt better by literally de facto. But having that double down on it, it's not just that though. In chat, people mentioning obviously what you said, the Night's Watch, it shall not end kind of mechanics, because they fail the test and they'll actually just die rather than stay alive, and you can force the fail much more often. But, and here's the big one for me, Greyjoys. All of those Asher cards that go off mechanics of, do a morale test and do this, do a morale test and do this, all those Warcry cards, you just shit on them. You want to do a morale test to heal some people back? Well, actually, I'm going to turn that into a morale test which you'll fail and even take wound, not heal them up.
Yeah. I
There
mean,
is-
but if we're talking competitively, so far, we might as well not even consider Greyjoys in the conversation. You know
That's
what I mean?
true,
Like
that's true.
that you can dick on Greyjoys is I turned up
Yeah, exactly.
so far. So
Yeah.
far from what we can tell. From what we've seen, if you turn up, put some models on the board, you've already won a game against Greyjoys.
Exactly. Now, this next thing is I think well, I'll see what you think, Carlo, because I think this is very good. I think this is
This
deceptively good.
is hello. This is hello hard control. Like, I mean, that's hard control. Replace the zone's effect
NC
with
claim. Yep. NC claims, replace the zone, and you go on. You can enjoy this as I watch you
target
splash
one enemy
everywhere.
combat unit and attach the bribery card until they pass a morale test or are targeted by money bags. Interesting pair of like removal triggers there. Kind of one we control, the Lannister player controls, which is unless most of the time you were just talking about Asher and her ways to trigger her own morale test, but of course most of the time I will be triggering a morale test on you, and the other one is that you target yourself with money bags to get rid of it. As long as it's attached, the unit attacks with its lowest attack dice value. That is interesting, and I think the card's very powerful. I think it has a real effect. I do actually like it. I don't think it's like way overpowered, but I think it's pretty good. I think it has quite a big effect on ranged units, which early on, generally speaking, you know, they crossbowmen strong on 1 rank, strong on 2 ranks, decay really badly onto that 3rd rank, have a really bad last attack rank profile. That might change in the future because they're talking about, you know, units being viable right onto their last one.
Yeah.
The thing I don't like about this card, the one thing I don't like is it's just going to be a rules question. What happens when my card says you attack with your lowest ranks and your card says you attack with your highest ranks? As far as I can tell, I've actually looked for it in the rule book. Nothing breaks that tie. We both say must.
I'm going to do this for your benefit, Carlo. I'm going to find it in the rule book where it says exactly this interaction and explains what to do. So bear in mind, guys, any chance to prove Carlo wrong, you know I am going to take it with absolute...
I take it back. There's no video evidence.
There's no video evidence, is there not? Dice of... Here we
go.
Page 22. Sometimes abilities effects will have a unit roll its highest attack value or its lowest attack value. If both of these effects are on the same unit, the unit will roll its lowest attack die value. Down here.
Boom. Card's amazing. All right, there we go. Bang. Bribery is twice as good as I thought it was. And I'm on board. There we go. Bribery.
There we go. So Carlo definitely does need to learn to read. Anyway.
So wrong. Everybody calling me out.
Rightly so.
Nobody's on my side.
Of course not. So the reason I like this card is, and it's something I discussed with a couple of guys in the memeing channel over on the NRG Discord one night, in that it's a brilliant gambit, right? Or kind of not even a gambit, but it's a tempo swing. This card is a beautiful tempo card, right? Because you can play this on turn 1 onto a unit. When you take money bags, for example, you can play this. Target an enemy's unit that you know is going to be a threat for them going into, like, if they've got turn 1 on the next round, and they're not going to want to take a good charge. They're not going to want to take is their first thing of the turn going to be one to take bags and take off a card? Like, that's awful. That's an awful turn 1 play if that's all you're doing. Now, you do actually, interestingly enough, you do still get the heal and removing the token if you target the unit with bags, right? So you can get the heal and the token off and also get bribery off. So you want to be careful with how you do that. But
it's absolutely just put it on a unit and ignore. Like, it's you know, it's just if the unit's attack profile is weak enough on the last rank, they are worthless. You don't need a weakened token. You don't need anything else. It's just, here you go, do nothing until my opponent does something about it. So I actually think it's a really good interactive way of having a very hard control level. Like, that unit is very, very nullified, but there's a direct interaction. Your opponent can do things about it. They just don't want to. And that's much, much better than, okay, I activate, here's Walder, you've got no abilities. Like, that's also hard control. They're both the same, but this one, there's interplay and tactics around it.
What I like about this card is I feel like this is very similar to what the old Surrounded and Exposed used to be. I feel like this card has a skill cap to it that new players might just play it because they can. I think most new players will probably understand when it's good to play this card, but a lot of players will just kind of play it when they can, kind of thing. Whereas I think higher skill players, higher level players will play this knowing about the understanding of the tempo of the turn and how it interacts with the tempo of the turn and kind of like interacts with the game being played out and the turn and the sequence of the round. I think this is a really good card, and it's superb at taking. This is the best kind of interaction I've ever seen, where you take a tempo hit to gain tempo later on. And I think this is a very well designed card. I also think it's very strong. I think this is going to throw.
I mean, it's right up there in terms of like. Thing is you possibly don't want it mid game. You don't want it once the fight is engaged. Probably so not. The only thing is it leans very heavily into that category of God. I hope this is in my starting hand. Yeah. And then later on, you're like, nah, I didn't really want that card. Or then again, maybe as we come down to having hardly any units left, but everybody's still got their NCUs because generally NCUs don't die. Again, it starts to come up in value again. Them having just a couple of units, you nullifying their really main unit and really taking control of the way that things interact. But like in the mid phase, when there's tons of powerful things on the table, lots of aggressive threats, and you can't take that hit, it's probably bad. But overall, what a card! Really like it in terms of its design and its effect.
Definitely. Welcome, Vlad, as well. And welcome everyone who's in the chat who we've not said hello to this evening, because we haven't said hello to everyone. I do apologise. So, I'll tell you why I hate this card. I really hate the fact that my Cave Dweller Savages are going to work really hard to get to their lower rank and really hit hard on their low rank, and then you're just going to be like, huh, lol, hit on your lowest rank anyway. And it's like, oh. So all that hard work I've now lost. And there's also a chance that if I'm on my last rank, I'll attack you and I'll die anyway.
Don't worry, Mickey. It's not that hard work for me to put your Cave Dwellers on one rank.
I know. I am aware. All right.
That's easy, mate. Don't worry about that part.
I know. Moving on. Counterplot. When an opponent plays a tactics card, which is what the old trigger used to be. The old trigger used to be when an opponent plays a tactics card. Now, they've added a little bit on the end, which actually, in hindsight, is really, really goddamn useful. Before resolving that card, the old Winter is Coming counterplot argument. Can you counterplot Winter is Coming? That was like the biggest meme, and it was the meme of A Song of Ice and Fire for so long.
It was so funny. And everybody's response was, yeah, but why?
So, finally, counterplot.
Why do you want to?
It confirms that. It double downs on that. So, we do finally get that. And it's exactly the same card. It is word for word on the actual card, I think exactly the same. Interestingly, what they have changed is that if you control crowns, the C of control is now capitalized. I don't know why.
Brilliant.
Anyway, they get
somebody's really been getting their errata money.
I also think there's a double. I also actually think there's a double space. There's a double space where it used to be on 2 lines, it now says May reroll, and you can see the gap between May and reroll is a bit bigger. Formatting. Come on, guys. Anyway.
Counterplot. It's an absolute linchpin of the Lannister deck. I was a tiny bit scared it would be reworked a bit. It wouldn't be unreasonable for it to have been a 4+ with a reroll or something like that. They could have changed it. I'm glad that they didn't. It's a staple of what Lannisters are. I think too many people have counterplot these days. You know what I mean? Like every commander under the sun is like counterplot for you, counterplot for you. What's that? This is supposed to be the control commander inside of this non-control faction. Give it counterplots. Do you know what I mean? It's like, all right,
sitting in the background, just throwing counterplots at people.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm happy that it's still there. When you consider that everybody's decks are generically getting worse, this is all good stuff for the Lannisters.
That leads us into Fealty to the Crown, which it's been changed, and we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how this works in the change version. And it's a change that you're gonna like and I hate. So, when an enemy fails a panic test, so specifically a panic test, not morale, interestingly. Obviously, panic, generally speaking, the way you cause wounds. Target one friendly unit in long range, which used to be short, right? Now long?
Yeah, pretty sure it's short.
So that's a big buff. I think that's a massive buff, actually. Bigger than probably any other buffs on the card. You then, each wound that enemy suffered from this test, restore 1 wound to that friendly unit up to 3. So, it doesn't take the bonuses of all of the ways to interact with panic anymore, right?
No.
But it can still restore up to 3 wounds. The kicker being, if you control crowns, you restore 1 more wound up to a maximum of 4. So you restore 2, 3, or 4 rather than 1, 2, or 3. This is actually another huge change as well. So any friendly unit within long range, Carlo, this can be giving wounds back to the mountain that rides. This can be giving wounds back to Knights of Castle Rock.
Yeah, it's anybody. And another thing, the other very subtle change is it used to be number of models your opponent lost.
Yes.
Not number of wounds they took. It was technically playable on cavalry. If they lost a cavalry model, you could gain 1 model back yourself. Generally, that sometimes happens because it used to be a +2 on crowns off the top of my head.
Yep.
And you used to be like, well, I'll grab 3 models back. But it was only ever on infantry. And everybody, lots of people misplayed it, actually. I've seen tons of battle reports where people don't read the card fully and they put 3 wounds back onto Knights of Castle Rock. That's where people want it. Like Lannister supremacy on a Knights of Castle Rock. It's like, brilliant, I'll grab a knight back. And you're like, no, you're not allowed. Short range, infantry only. And they're like, oh, there's nobody viable. It has been capped because it was at its most extreme a bit obscene, to be honest. Like sometimes with, I have literally seen and used I cut them down, maximum panic fail of 6 wounds with crowns. And I've just gone, well, all right. My 1 rank mountains men that had cut them down and vicious of just like, I'm charging in. My opponent's like, what? That does nothing. I do a couple of wounds. Then they vicious panic fail and they're like, oh crap. And I'm just like, fealty, full ranks again. Like, bang, 8 wounds. And they're like, what? And so it was absolutely in the category of like gotcha.
I mean,
it's definitely more consistent now.
I'm fairly convinced that was me.
I think it's a better card.
But yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think it's a better card. It will have more all-round consistency without absolutely changing games. But I still think it's powerful.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I can't say much more than that. It's a better card and it's a powerful card as well, I think, in my opinion. And that moves us on to the last card, Subjugation of Power, which we've actually already seen, right? We've already seen Subjugation of Power. It was in the review. So for each, when enemy combat units, that enemy performs 1 morale test. For each zone you control among crowns and money bags, they get an extra -2. So that can be a -4 test. Hear Me Roar, playable on a morale test, has synergy. On a failure until the end of the turn, they cannot be targeted by friendly tactics cards and lose all abilities.
It's
this now
I forget what it was called.
This is starting to look really good now.
What was the old one called? It was called very similar. You had mini bags. They took a -2 morale test when they activated, but they took D3 wounds unless paid mutiny. There we go. It's paid mutiny, but I actually prefer it. You played paid mutiny for the loss of generally. So paid mutiny only used to lose attachment abilities, and now it's the unit loses abilities on the tactics cards. I prefer it much more than the wounds you do off of the back of it. I think it's better. And I do think that it's a pretty decent card, particularly that you can stack the crowns and the money bags. Worth mentioning as a whole, We've got Moneybags Kicker, Moneybags kind of zonal effect, Moneybags Kicker on this, and then we've got 3 lots of Crown Kickers. 4th one with this. We're very, very heavily into Moneybags and Crowns, empowering the deck here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you consider that letters and swords and horses are all really, really important zones, I cannot imagine in a million years that Lannisters won't be heavily into a 3 NCU meta.
Yeah.
Like, when you think about the zones that you want to take for on-field use and the zones you want to control to empower your deck, you're going to want to have 3 things, in my opinion. But anyway, that's a whole aside. Subjugation of power, I think it's similar and different, but just as good as Paid Mutiny, just as useful. If anything, it actually has more use. The thing is, we're at the end of the deck. I really want Wealth of the Rock back. I don't know what I'm going to swap it for, but I kind of want Wealth of the Rock back. Can't work out what we lost it for. I guess we swapped it for Bribery.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I don't try and work out which ones you swapped out for what, because I think that's going down a dark path.
No, it's a fruitless kind of path to go down. Maybe Wealth of the Rock will appear in somebody's commander cards or something similar to it. But I think you can look at those 7 cards and you can think that they're all powerful cards. And none of them you can really point to as downgrades. They're all side grades at worst. And so the only thing that sticks out to me is that there's no Wealth of the Rock. So that's the only thing that you can say about the old one to the new one. And I felt that Wealth of the Rock was one of the most influential and important cards in the Lannister deck previously. That it's not there anymore. I think this one's way, way flatter, like way more consistent, much less like one particular card changes the whole fate of the game, and much more just continuous, general, powerful use.
The guys over at Rotterdam, White Scars, well, thanks for stopping by, obviously, guys. Fantastic to have you here. But they point out that the new subjugation of power is only for the turn and not the round. Which is the old Paid Mutiny used to do.
True.
So
true,
there is
yeah.
that, which does mean that Subjugation of Power has lost that kind of like real pump. But it does because it's on NCU because it's on unit activation.
Yeah, so they have committed to using the unit, so it's fine. Generally speaking, you're like, it's okay. I don't need to get rid of your abilities for the whole round. We're talking about, so it is defensive. Yes. It's when you activate, I can get rid of your offensive abilities. I can't get rid of all your defensive abilities too. I
actually think that
the deck is powerful.
Yeah, this is actually the closest approximation we see to Wealth of the Rock, actually. Defensive ability, turning off defensing card, turning off abilities. My immediate thing is Spearwise, right? I'm going to shoot you with my Spearwise. I'm going to do my charging volley.
No, you're not.
You just can't. You know?
No, you're not.
And
I'm not until you've committed to activating.
Exactly. I can't even put Tormund in there. I can't get anything in there. You just splat. My card says nothing.
This deck is absolutely on like thematic point. This deck is so focused and absolutely honed in on what Lannisters and their theme and their game plan all are, that outside of the Targaryen deck, which I still just think looks obscene, I still think the Targaryen deck looks obscene.
Yeah.
This deck is the best deck. And I actually think it's, like if I categorized it, it's a better deck than the Targaryen deck, because the Targaryen deck doesn't feel like it matches what Targaryens should be. It's not that it's really focused and really brilliant at what it does. It's just amazing. It's just like, you look at the cards and you're just like, that's just better than everybody else's. But this is very specific to the Lannisters. You're not like, that's just better than that. You're like, oh, that's so focused in on what it does. And the cards combo with each other. They're not overlapping their triggers. If anything, they're triggering off of each other. One makes you take the test, another one improves the test. And yeah, Grusslug, I'm not gonna lie, mate. It's all coming back out that I'm a Lannister at heart. What can I say? Like,
it gets better. So we reached the end of 7 cards, and your opinion is this is like brilliant. and it's like probably the best thematic deck and the most well put together deck as we've seen. There's not too many overlapping triggers. Everything is just brilliant. And in fact, that's actually another thing, by the way. There's not a single overlapping trigger whatsoever.
No.
Which, unlike Starks, which have got like four overlapping triggers in 7 cards, which is, don't even try and work that one out, because that's impossible. We take it a step further and we start looking at NCUs later on, right? And it's going to turn this deck, I think, from like a 10 or a 9 or a 10 up to an 11, I think. We'll look through that in a second. We see the units. Now, the units are all not particularly new, except one. The Pyromancers we've seen with the Vicious, defenders do not roll defense dice, and after completing the attack, for each attack roll of a 1, the Pyromancers take a wound. That's both on the melee and the ranged attack. They come with Horrific Visage, 5 movement, 7/7/4, 7/7/4, same attack profile for short range, 6 and 6. 6 morale, 6 armor. 7-point Pyromancers.
6 morale's rough, if people hadn't remembered or noticed.
It is indeed.
Old Pyromancers had... Did they have 8?
I think they
definitely 7.
I think they might have
they
might have had 8.
For some guys who were holding a explosive grenade, they were a bit terrified to be on the battlefield. So I mean, which is fair enough, you know, like I'd chuck it and get out of there. But they're okay. I still don't think
they were 7.
I still don't think Pyromancers see play myself, but that's because short range and that kind of life profile, that kind of health, that 6-up save, even with a 6+ morale, you don't make it into combat without being already nearly dead. They've got that ranged attack profile now of a 7/7/4, and they hit on 3. There's lots of things going for them. They don't hit on what the ones in combat don't do wounds to both of us. Still vicious. They're still very, very aggressive. Improved Horrific Visage is even better. I'm still struggling to see them see use. Maybe Horrific Visage keeps them alive long enough against ranged units that they become viable. But I've never quite managed to get use out of them. Depends on whether or not Gregor, even though that shouldn't be a thematic fit, really depends on whether or not Gregor, as an offensive commander, can make good use of them.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I don't think there's much more we can say about that. That is just going to be one of those things that comes out in the wash. But I do think that Horrific Visage, certainly from the immediate kind of like if they get charged or something like that, it gives them that element of protection. But it isn't going to stop them dying. You know, it's just going to make them. Your opponent have to think twice. Of course, with all the morale synergies that the Lannisters have, Horrific Visage is not actually that good an ability to run into with the Lannisters, because they can double down on it really hard, make you fail, do all kinds of other weird and wonderful things for you. Anyway,
up until somebody uses it to get rid of their own bribery. God damn it.
Bants. Anyway, Lannister Halberdiers. Seen these guys before. The set for charge with the modified set for charge now with the it's not just front but also sides and flanks they can do the set for charge on, which kind of makes sense. A pike block.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't really make a huge amount of sense.
No. It does not make sense. I hate these guys on principle, on pure principle. It's bullshit. Set for charge should not be, I get charged in the flank, I get to activate, I'm going to turn to face you and attack you, and then you don't get any flank bonuses anymore. Nah, that's not cool. That's not, like, it's not good.
I can see...
You shouldn't be able to use...
Pike square... Is it trying to emulate, like, pike square formation? Right? Where there are pike, literal like a pike block in the age of pike and shots. Even though this is this is before the pike and shot era. Is that what it's trying to emulate? Because I think that's what it's trying to emulate.
We're not Greek phalanxes. Like, come on, like you.
Bunch of guys with
you're a guy with a halberd. You know what I mean? Like, come on now. So the thing, you know, like, to be honest, you know, Tara's right. Like, it was weak before. It was bad. I don't know what to say. You know, their attack profile went back down, right? Because they were at like an 8/8/4 for a while. Is that right?
Yeah.
And now they're back down to a 7/7/4. They've taken that loss in return for having this improved set for charge, which I just think creates more situations where your opponent's like, nah, I'm not interested. No thanks. Maybe Taunt's not the meme, but like still, I don't like it on principle. And to be honest, when we get to the next 2 units, I'm like, well, I can pass it up anyway because they good.
I know, right? Anyway, we'll move on to Guardsmen. We've seen Guardsmen before. The 4 movement, the 6/5/4 attack on 4+, 3 armor, obviously 7 morale, with the changed Lannister supremacy. Still feeling good about Lannister Guardsmen? Or is something else got your eye?
Lannister Guardsmen still look very good. Like, they will be the 5-point unit that everybody else compares themselves to. You know, like, in reality. It's the old meme will be like, right, you're good, but can you fight a Lannister Guardsman? You know, like the litmus test will be like, oh, what do you guys think of like these sworn swords with this attachment? And I cost like 6 or 7 points, and I'll just say, well, can you fight a Lannister Guardsman at 5 points? Because if the answer is no, then you're not worth 7 points, are you? So, like, I think that Lannister Guardsmen are that good that they are 5-point bracket defining. And then we've got Poor Fellows, which
we'll get to in a
4
second.
points.
So answering Bob's question, do you get to pivot or not? You do get to pivot. By definition of the rules, it says if this unit is not engaged with another enemy, it performs 1 melee attack action. A melee attack action is the whole action starting from top to bottom. The first thing you can do in part of a melee attack action is rotate your base
Turn to
face the enemy and align however you want to align, 50, 100%, whatever. But yeah, I just wish they didn't define their actions like this. I wish they defined it as subcategories and things that would make it much easier. Because then they could do things like that and the interactions wouldn't just be, oh, do this whole thing, which has ridiculous implications. Charge, for example, with mammoths, right? Stupid. So, Poor Fellows. I remember a discussion me and you had, Carlo, many moons ago, and I think it was during one of our tournament games, right? I think we were playing in the final or the game before the finals, depending on where we got matched up in our local tournament scene. And
when there's only 2 people, Mickey, the first game's a final, so
exactly, when there's only 2 players, right? No, there's other players there, but do they really count? Anyway, the point is, we'd play our game, and it would usually go close. I think in the 2 tournaments we played in, I think you won them both, didn't you? I think. And I remember us discussing Poor Fellows afterwards, and it was like how you would take them apart, and the strategies were all there, everything was there, ready to go, but I distinctly remember you saying to me one day, because you knew it would trigger me really hard, God, Poor Fellows should just be insignificant. It would make them just a little bit better to make them, like, make sense of the unit thematically. And I basically went, nah, mate, you're an idiot. F off.
That was a great trigger.
It was a great trigger. So instead, what they did was they made them 4 points, they dropped a point off them, and they took away some of this auto damage mechanic. They stripped away. They made the morale a little bit worse. They made their bludgeon attack a little bit worse, which that's in theme with the whole update, really. And they give them the Zealous Resurgence, which is like they spend the faith tokens now to heal. Okay, so they are a worse unit, I think. I think they are
absolutely, without a doubt,
a worse unit.
They're worse.
Yeah, but
much worse. Not much worse. They're really different. I do. So I'm a Lannister player, so there's a huge bias in this, but I like the change, right? To put this into more perspective, for those who don't know, I have won multiple tournaments where the only thing I put on the board was Poor Fellows and Knights of Castle Rock. Played nothing else.
Sometimes didn't you run crossbows in your other list or something? That was it. Like, it was just like the same thing, but with a crossbow unit instead.
The majority of games, all I would put on the board was, here's some Poor Fellows, here's some Knights of Castle Rock. Deal with it. I do think that, well, possibly we haven't seen Knights of Castle Rock. It is possible that, like, Poor Fellows and some Knights could still be a very viable army. But as a general rule, I'd say as a general rule, they're not such an overwhelmingly all-round amazing unit anymore. The thing about old Poor Fellows at 5 points was they could fight anything in the game once you had High Sparrow cards, right?
Yeah.
I can out heal most sources of damage unless you can do 12 wounds and, with your basic attack, I'm almost never going to fail my panic check. So you can't one-shot me, which is very, very important in the old 1.6, remember? One-shot is the majority of the way that aggressive armies are built. I'm cheap enough to basically give Lannisters a form of activation control, and I heal very, very fast, very, very aggressively. On top of that, if you're not aggressive enough, if you're tanky, if you're giant, if you're knights, if you're anything, I can then choose to start sacrificing and auto-wounding both of us. There was nothing that shouldn't be scared of me. Even if you cost 10 points, you should be scared of a unit of poor fellows. And absolutely, point for point, you would not beat 2 units of poor fellows if you cost 10 points.
Yep.
The new unit can't fight anything in the game anymore. But I do actually think because it costs 4 points, it's just as good.
If not better.
It's just as good.
And Francesco says something kind of depressing in chat here. That's the key for 8 activations right there. I'm going to call that out and say bollocks. That's not the key to 8 activations. Poor fellows are the key to 9 activation Lannister list.
Maybe.
I think,
so the thing is,
100%.
So there's no NCU commander.
Nope.
9 activations says I'm picking 9 units that cost 4 points each.
Yep.
That's 3 NCUs at 4 points, 6 poor fellows, and I've got 4 points left to upgrade some things. But I think that that's not enough points to make other things viable. Myself, we'll see. We'll see. I don't want Lannisters to be this 9 activation faction. They could end up being. I'm not saying that they're not going to be. But luckily, I think that poor fellows can't fight enough things. Myself, I think that poor fellows can't currently fight enough different things at 4 points to be 9. I think they are the key to very, very powerful 8 activation lists. And the key being that they get there easily and have points to spend on really important, aggressive, army-defining pieces, while everybody else struggles just to get there and spams the cheapest things they can put on the board.
That's the thing, though, right? And that's actually the biggest thing that I want to make with the 9 activation list. 9 activation lists, you're right, it's probably not very good in the new meta. Not necessarily, and not poor fellow spam is not necessarily very good on top of that. But the point is, having access to a list building mechanic that can get you there is a strength in and of itself, right? That is actually the most important part there. It's not about, but you're just going to run 9 activation lists. No, not at all. The fact I can build a viable 9 activation list is what you should be scared about. Because that means, as you say, the 8 activation lists become actually really good. When what we've seen in the grand scheme of things is that free folk can actually get and have been getting, you can actually get a 12 activation free folk list, but you can actually go higher than that. It is possible, but they're trash. You drop to 11 though.
Yeah.
Those spare points you've taken out of those activations actually makes literally meta lists. The meta free folk lists at the moment are 11 activations, 11-10. Starks, they can hit 12 activations. But no one ever sees the 12 activation Starks because it's a pile of crap. I'll be honest with you. You want to run the 11 activation list. Same with here. Lannisters can now reach technically a 10, but I don't think you'd ever run a 10 realistically. But the 9 is viable. Not great, but viable. The 8, that's a great list. That's the thing, is that the option to make higher activation lists unlocks good lists at lower activations. And that's kind of like the way to think about it. Targs can't make a good 8 activation list. Barely make an 8 activation list at the moment. And thus, when it comes to making a 7 activation list, it kind of sucks in 1.6. They can't really make it. It's ignoring MOD, of course. They can't make those good lists lower level because they can't even get up to the high levels.
I think that they will continue to just be defining of Lannisters at a competitive level. And I tell you what's really interesting. People are like, okay, I'm going to stick this unit in, bang, 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 2 of them, 3 of them, whatever your basis is for what you're building out. Nobody's seen what High Sparrow does. Like when High Sparrow comes, that's when you got to be thinking, maybe nine activation Portfollios isn't trash anymore. What if High Sparrow cards are everything they ever needed to just kill anything? And then you just got like these 6 Portfollios across the board that don't die because they've got incredible healing. You don't know where to start. They've got enough frontage to like cover the board. You're never going to flank them. You're never going to get past them. So you're like, okay, I'll just take them on one by one. And then it's just like wherever you focus, the High Sparrow cards just start coming down. Bang, 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 bang. Heal, avoid damage, gain attacks based on passing a morale test. If they're the same kind of mechanic they are right now, there's no reason why Portfollios couldn't just like go into overdrive. And you know what? Give him Lannister pays his debts, and they're not even like a bad fighting unit at 4 points. These guys are like monstrous. So
always reroll if they spend the token on 4s with precision. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Like again, it's not the fact that they will be good. I think this is a big thing. It's not the fact that they will be good, that these high activation lists will be good. The fact they're even viable as a fact we're even talking about them is enough to make them good enough to be considered. And they might end up being trash. But I'd rather see bad lists being played because people believe they're viable and learning that they're not, than what we currently see, which is people just not playing high activation target lists because they're just not a viable option, right?
Yeah.
Playing games gives us data. Data tells us what's good. Not playing games and not getting data because you can't do it, doesn't generate anything, isn't good.
You got to be happy about when you sit down and look at it all as a Lannister player. You got to be happy about Portfollios. You can't be sad at what they've lost. You got to be happy at what they gained. I'll tell you the one thing that you can't complain about though is, okay, it's not like absolute night and day, but Portfollios edged out Guardsmen in 90% of competitive cases, right? Because they shared the same points value, the same points cost, the same point range. I do feel that when I saw Lannister Guardsmen, I did think, okay, so like Lannister Guardsmen and the new Portfollios, we're never going to see Portfollios anymore. We're only going to see Lannister Guardsmen. I think that Portfollios are very, very good at 4, and that Lannister Guardsmen are very, very good at 5. If you can afford 5 and it's the right list and you want supremacy, then Lannister Guardsmen are a straight up better unit. And I think both will see play. I still think that when it all comes out, the cheap activation at 4 will be more influential than a unit of Guardsmen, which you can choose to ignore because, God, it's going to hurt when you attack them. But if I'm sitting here telling you that Lannister Guardsmen are the defining unit in the 5-point category, and I'm probably going to pick Portfollios instead, then you got to believe Portfollios are good.
I don't know about the 6-point category. I don't think Lannister Halberdiers are the best 6-point unit. I don't necessarily think Pyros are the best 7-point unit. I don't know. I have to think about it a lot and look at the values and things. But the best 5-point unit is looking really close to Guardsmen. The best 4-point unit is looking really close to Portfollios. Haven't even seen any of the 1-point attachments yet. Champions of the Faith in Portfollios, making them a 5-point unit, could turn them up to ridiculous levels, like old Portfolio style quality.
Yeah.
And if they are, then
if you can get it back at 5 points, if you can get back everything that you lost when you went from 5 points to 4 points, if you can have it back if you want by paying a point, then you're just objectively better. Like, because I can be 4 if I want, or I can have what I used to have for 5. And that's just more list building opportunities. And the thing that has held Lannisters back is that it's always been such a stretch for them to get to 8, while everybody else good competes at 9 and 10. And they just about managed to put these viable lists in at 8 and could never make 9. And
not unless Mountain that ride,
and that's why Mountain that rides was so important to them. just coming in at 4 points, Mountain That Rides was amazing because he was 4 points, not because of anything else, because he was 4 points. And now they've just got a 4-point unit that they can put as many as they want on the board. And unlike Raiders, they're not a liability. They're not going to die easily. If anything, they'll just outperform everything in the 5-point category.
That's actually the worst bit, is that you really see the insignificant tax hit Raiders now. Like, insignificant for the way they seem to have, like, priced it is a point, at least a point on its own. Never mind the fact
I want to see.
Yeah.
I want to see conscripts. We'll see where conscripts come out in the wash, because this is feeling like a clustered category right now. 4-point combat units. And let's see where on the scale of Raider to poor fellow conscripts end up, because they're pretty two extremes of what a 4-point unit can do.
Usually. All right then. And it gets better because we look at the NCUs now. So let's look at Cersei. We already knew what Cersei did. 2 order tokens. Each time she claims a zone, she can remove an order token from it. It's just a free thing she can just do when she claims a zone. And if you control the crowns, you can look through your tactics deck or your discard pile for Hear Me Roar. And if you control the money bags, you can search for Subjugation of Power in the discard or draw. Always shuffling your tactics card. Always shuffling your tactics deck when you do so. She can get 2 cards back on 1 order spend if you want. You can go search for 2 cards she wants. And Hear Me Roar and
Subjugation of Power. Subjugation of Power is when you activate, and Hear Me Roar is Subjugation of Power when you activate, take a morale test. Hear Me Roar when you take a morale test, do this. So you can, if you want, you can have them. You can have them both and just play them both. Bang bang. I take them both, please, and then I'll have them both, please. And yeah, I mean, now that we've seen the cards, they're not the most powerful cards in the deck, but they're not bad cards at all. I think she'll be, when you look at everything in terms of like its ability to turn off tactics cards and abilities for the turn, on top of Hear Me Roar having real chances to force through that test, it's very much a denial of abilities whenever I want it.
And that's the bit that scares me a little bit, because this is basically, not quite, but for a lot of intents and purposes, you can almost view this as a Wealth of the Rock. It's an order token that gets you back Wealth of the Rock, basically. Because if you're turning off abilities, and you're doing a wound if you're lucky enough as well, you're probably going to be saving yourself a couple of wounds on each attack that they make against you. That's probably what you're going to be saving. So as a result, this is essentially like keeping Wealth of the Rock and having 2 times where you just get Wealth of the Rock back. If I sold that to you and sold you that, a 4-point card, would you take that, Carlo?
Yeah.
So this is definitely worth it. This is definitely a good card. And that's assuming you use
the combo. So there is something to do with it. I have Cersei. If you're going to let me take both zones, and activate Cersei, like Cersei, of course, still has to. You have to have these zones as Cersei comes to claim a zone. Each time Cersei claims a zone, you may remove 1 token from her. If you do, perform the following. So I guess I can take either of those zones with Cersei, and they will count for herself. I don't have to already have both.
No.
But still, if I've got one and you leave the other open and I'm about to activate Cersei, you have to know that you're giving me this pair of cards if I want. Like if you only ever give me one or the other of them, then it's not like I have 4 tokens I can use. I only get to use it twice. But absolutely, I think she's very, very viable at 4 points.
Goes nicely into Joffrey Baratheon, though, doesn't it? Another 4-point NCU. Each time Joffrey claims a zone other than crowns, your opponent may target one of your combat units. They become panicked. That seems fair enough. That's the very Joffrey kind of like self-panic mechanic we've seen before. While he's on the tactics board, he counts controlling crowns, which is what we saw before. Hashtag Kingsguard synergy, which may or may not still exist. Don't know. And finally, influence. While influencing an enemy, that enemy suffers +1 from failing panic tests. +1 wounds. Yep, so a little bit of an extra wound, Giga Vicious, if you will, on a stick, kind of.
Joffrey was like always almost good enough, right? Like almost there.
Yep.
They've given him 2 buffs. One is that if you're taking crowns anyway, then you don't suffer the negatives. That's good. That was definitely worthwhile and could possibly have made him viable. Maybe depends how everything falls out. Like depends if with everybody else getting worse generally in the 4-point category, 3-point NCUs going away, that could have been enough. But with the +1 wound influence, I think he's absolutely just a viable NCU right now. Looks very, very good to me. Again, I still think you want to be building him into an army, such as Poor fellow spam, where you don't care about that panic token. So we'll see how Poor Fellows and Warrior Sons and stuff fall out. I used Joffrey for quite a while. In the end, I decided I actually just didn't need him. The amount of times people gave me crowns anyway, it was kind of pointless. But if Kingsguard are still what they are, then Joffrey, I think, will be a go-to and a lot of use.
I also think the synergy with Cersei is obviously apparent, and even a step further with Bribery, is you can take Joffrey first, you can take Moneybags, replace the effect with Bribery, and you can bribe an enemy unit. You count as controlling Moneybags, and now, of course, crowns. Okay, one of your units becomes panicked. Interestingly, you can resolve the Joffrey ability before you resolve the Moneybags ability, so you can even take Moneybags, make them panic a unit, and then take the panic off with the Moneybags if you're not using Bribery. Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
And then you can't control
both
zones.
But my opponent gets to choose, assume, right? My opponent chooses who becomes panicked. Yeah. So I can't put it on my own unit and just be like, I'll put it on that wounded unit, which I was going to heal anyway, and I'll take it off.
But it does mean your opponent...
Right, you can say, please put the panic down somewhere, and then as soon as they put it there, you're just like, and I'll have it off, please.
Yep. So he can literally heal his own panic, which is not bad. But if you choose, of course, you can play the Bribery card instead, and then the bags is taken, so they can't even remove the Bribery very easily. It also, as I said, synergizes straight into Cersei. Control both of those zones, get both of those card backs on the next activation. Boom, done. Easy. I can see this combo being a little bit dirty. But it gets better. It gets better. It does. Right? Tywin. Not Tywin. Tyrion. 5-point NCU. 5-point NCU now. The people... We'll talk about this in a second. I think people have blown their minds over something that's revealed here. I'm going to temper expectations a little when we get there. But 5-point NCU Tyrion. He comes with the maximum hand size is +1. Shout out to Leet Teddy. He did a Carlo there and didn't read the card properly and completely missed that it gives him +1 hand size. A little bit like Carlo doesn't understand how maximum attack dice and lowest attack dice interact. Anyway.
When he makes wild claims, like it's not in the rulebook anywhere, and then he hasn't read it properly.
Literally in the rulebook. Anyway.
Function, Carlo?
So he starts with 4 cards, and when you refresh his hand, he can go back up to 4 cards, right? So he's the old Tyrion, basically, in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But he also gives you the +1 hand size, so you can have 6 in your maximum hand rather than 5. Once per game, when an opponent plays a tactics card, before resolving that tactics card, you may search your tactics deck or discard pile for 1 counterplot card and play it. Then shuffle your tactics deck. So you pay 5 points for counterplot. Counterplot and +1 hand size on an NCU. I think this is just great. Like, this is just really good.
I don't know, maybe.
I reckon it's brilliant.
I read it and I say, you're a tiny bit expensive at 5 points.
Oh, sure. You're an expensive NCU, definitely.
Tiny bit. You're 4.5 points is what I say. Like, if you told me he's 4 points, I'm like, well, he's better than Cersei and he's better than Joffrey, and I'm buying him every game. But at 5, I'm like, I don't care. This is the thing. We'll see. We'll see how much I care about the maximum hand size. If the maximum hand size is useful, then I'm like, you know what? You're great value at 5 points. I see it, or I think it's really worth it. But when I look at my deck, I think my triggers aren't hard. Like, I don't think I'm going to be stuck with a big hand. Even if I'm playing letters, even if I'm using Cersei to grab more cards and always playing cards into my deck and my hand, I don't think that I'm going to be capped at my hand cap that often. Do I value 4 cards per round? It's okay. Yeah, it's decent. But the counterplot once per game, I'm not sold on it making me more useful than the other NCUs that we've, more useful than Cersei, more useful than Joffrey, better than Varys. That's what we always have to compare to.
Right.
New Varys
Varys.
looks mega efficient at 4 points. So I'm like, maybe.
Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe. I think you're going to see Tyrion in one of two lists potentially. I think you'll see Tyrion when you can afford to spend perhaps the extra point on Tyrion over the Varys, Cersei, Joffrey, which I think was a 3 combo, by the way. Those 3 NCUs of Joffrey, Varys, and Cersei are just phenomenal, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think you can afford, if you can afford to take the Tyrion, I think you do. But I agree it's a hard spend, but I do think it's very good. I think if you're playing against an opponent where they are reliant very carefully on 1 or 2 important cards in the deck that are going to be very tempo swingy and very important for them to achieve what they're trying to achieve, having a counterplot on a stick is great. Like, it's literally just great. Imagine seeing this in like an Endless Horde coming out in an inconvenient time. We've already played counterplot a couple of times, and you just be like, oh, I definitely don't want him to counterplot back his, say, Bone Lord's Chosen. Nah, go away. Off you go.
True.
It has
Yeah.
very important, very relevant combinations into what we don't know yet. We do not know, are tactics cards going to be important in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
And if they are,
Yeah.
Tyrion's good. Just having an extra shot.
Yeah. So I think his problem is that at 4 points he's too good. At 5 points, I'm currently not sold.
Yes.
Like that. That's where I'm at. I'm not. If you told me he was 4, then I'd say no, you've done it wrong. But
no.
We'll see. We'll see if he's worth 5 points, but I don't see it instantly myself. But not free folk. Lannisters. This is the thing we're talking about in terms of the poor fellows. Now Lannisters are one of the factions that have the most spare points to spend. At 8 activations, when we're trying to stick 5 combat units, 3 NCUs down, I have more spare points where I can find 1 more point to go to 5-point NCU. Whereas you're absolutely going to be stuck with 3 4-point NCUs, bare bones, minimum stuff, minimum cost units. I'm going to be able to stick 8-point Knights of Castle Rock or Flayed Men or whatever the value heavy hitter is, plus some 6-pointers, some 4-pointers, and I can still have a 5-point NCU. Because I've just got points to spare.
Yep, exactly. And that's again the poor fellow effect. It's not just that poor fellows are 4 points, right? It's not that they are bad, inverted commas, for 4 points. It's that they're very efficient for 4 points. 4-point gaps are lovely to fill.
Yeah.
And we move on to the last reveal. We see, and everyone's going to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm just like, hold your horses just for a moment. We see Tywin Lannister, which is the first 6-point NCU they've ever revealed. I know, right? Everyone's blowing their eyes. I was not surprised. Yeah. Now, I don't know about you, Carlo. When I saw 6-point Tywin, I didn't be like, whoa, what? They've gone to 6-point NCU? I mean, I was always under the imagination they could have made a 6-point NCU, 7-point NCU, 8. They didn't make them before because they didn't value them that highly. But as soon as they decided that 3-point NCUs weren't a thing, I'm pretty sure you could have been like, well, they're just rising all the NCUs by a point in efficiency or a point in their cost. So a 6-point NCU is definitely within the realms. I'm not surprised if eventually we see a 7 or 8-point NCU if things continue down this route. I think it would be unlikely. I think it would be very unlikely. But it wouldn't blow my mind and be like, what? Completely unconceivable. I think 6-point NCUs is definitely something you could have seen coming, to be honest, 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay, you're being completely logical. It's completely acceptable. Of course, we should have seen 6-point NCUs coming along, but I saw it and I was like, "What the fuck? He cost 6 points." I mean, my mind was blown. Like, of course, you lay out logical reasons why it was obvious there's going to be a 6-point NCU. There used to be 5-point NCUs and there used to be 3-point NCUs. Now there's 4-point NCUs and there's 6-point NCUs. Yeah. Look at his abilities. Look at that list. They're all amazing. I was still like, 6 points. What the? Honestly, I'm like, I can buy, I can have 18 poor fellows for that. I'm counting everything in poor fellows now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they come with an auto heal at the start of the game. I think I actually get 21 poor fellows for that. Like,
yeah, and also Charles points out he literally said that there was a 4 to 6 range in December. Like, this again, like, shouldn't be a surprise, and it should definitely not be a surprise.
Stop coming at us with the logic. I don't.
It should be surprised that it's
cards.
The head.
Clearly, I don't read the cards before. We've already worked that out.
You definitely don't. So, Reigns of Castamere, let's go for it. I appreciate the name, Reigns of Castamere, obviously the very famous piece from the show, which was a very good piece from the show as well. Also, a very good piece in the books when it goes through the lyrics in the books, the lyrics of the song. Once per game, at the start of any turn, so very open trigger, very good trigger, target any number of combat units. One of them becomes panicked. One of them becomes vulnerable. One of them suffers 4 hits. One of them takes a panic test. And one of them lose all abilities until the end of the round. And the same combat unit may be targeted by multiple effects. Yeah, so you just do 5 things, and it can happen all to the same unit or to any myriad of units you want. You can get up to 5 units, I guess. But you can just be like boom, 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 shotgun approach, or you can be like laser beam, zap a unit. Let's break it down. Panicked. Fine. Great. Nothing special about panic token. Really, nothing majorly special about that. Fine. A vulnerable token. Maybe not great. But it's just another token. Nothing wrong with a token, right? We just said that. Great. Suffering 4 hits. Where do you stand on that one, Carlo?
Feels weak. So we've seen new dogs, 4 wounds. You're not going to kill one unless you've already got set up. I feel like in the old 1.6, 2 wound solos with 3 armor save, it was absolutely in the realms of you could kill a solo here.
Well,
now it feels like
it, right? You vulnerable it, then drop the 4 hits on. Bang! That's not unreasonable. That solo dies on 2 wounds.
Exactly. Even at 3 wounds with a 4+ save, that same combo, vulnerable 4 hit, could die. At 4 wounds, solos feel like they're like, yeah, okay, but only in really, really extreme situations. Only like you're playing an absolute luck game there if you think that this unit's going to die.
Rip Jorah. He's a 3 wound solo. And he's really good at the things right now. Rip perhaps. So the dogs are obviously one thing entirely, but rip any kind of like any form of like the small solos, the kind of like men on horses solos rather than the monster solos.
We'll see where Marshall falls. We'll see where
Lord of Dragonstone. Although I imagine the Lord of Dragonstone will keep his ridiculous armor. I'd imagine
he's got his armor save, so even with a vulnerable,
we'll see. It's good, but it really depends on what he's going to be facing. Right? They're just 4 hits or anything.
Very, very dependent.
It also kind of massively laughs in the face, or Varys, I should say, massively laughs in the face of Tywin here, because Varys, you take 3 hits when you take the swords if you spend an order token. We'll get on to Varys in a second, actually. Yeah, because it's nutty. But yes. Next one, a panic test. I mean, this could be useful with the Lannister deck, right? With the Lannister deck? Yeah. This could be useful.
That can help.
And the panic token with it as well, especially. Because you're probably going to drop them together, right? Cool. Then we end up with the last point. You lose all abilities until the end of the round. Which is the old classic Tywin. That was what old Tywin did. What do you think about that?
What about him as a whole?
Well, that ability and
Well,
then as him as a whole, yeah.
So I mean, lose all abilities until the end of the round is powerful, right? That outstrips all of his other effects.
Yeah.
Significantly so, in my opinion. Like, personally, if 4 wounds, 4 hits becomes what he's taken for, then like you say, then I think we're probably just thinking Varys is absolutely phenomenal, because Varys can do that 4 times a game. I forget how many tokens he even has. He can do that many times a game, just like on demand when swords happens. No, it's not complete on demand, but there's that, which is that can't be that valuable based on the fact of what Varys has. Panic tech is hard to define. That they can be spread across 5 units is a bonus, a distinct bonus, but he's not that much better than when he gave 3 tokens and turned all your abilities off. Like, he's not that much better than his 4-point version. Tell me why. Tell me why I'm better. Because I kill a dog?
Might kill a dog.
But I don't. Maybe. Ish. I don't like him. I don't like him. It's not that he's too powerful or even that he's too weak. What he felt like when I first looked at this, right? Okay, you have to say that I was in the category. I was in the camp and the category of, oh my God, he's 6 points, mind blown, right? My instant reaction was, honestly, he's too good to be 5 points, but he's not good enough to be 6. A little bit similar to Tyrion, but way more so. Tyrion felt like he's like 4.8 points, 4.6 points. He leans more to the 5 category. Tywin Lannister is 5.5 points. If anything, he's 5.3 points. You know, like I'm not saying he's fair at 5, but I'm not buying him for 6. People buy NCUs at 4 points because they can't buy combat units at 4 points. He's not worth a whole combat unit. No way. And you can get good combat units for 6 points.
Certainly nowadays, definitely.
Yeah. He's not better than a unit of Lannister Guardsmen.
No. That's actually the funny thing. Sorry to kind of like destroy everyone's hopes and dreams who are like, oh my God, he's amazing. He's not. He's good. He's not bad. I think what people before I say this, he's not bad. But he's not great. You know, you're going to be taking him because you feel like you need him in your list, not because he's an efficient points grab.
Yeah.
That's what it feels
I don't know why he sits so uneasy with me, but this idea of NCUs at 6 points does sit uneasily with me. It doesn't sit right with me because it feels like you don't. I'll tell you what it is, right? I'll tell you what it is for me. We're back to this time. We're back to 1.5, 1.6, whatever you want to call it, right? Where they didn't understand why people were taking 5-point units and why nobody was picking their 9-point swordsman, you know, their 9-point unsullied swordsman. Why does nobody pick them? Look how amazing their stats are. Look at everything they do. Does all this good stuff. They do nothing badly. And I'm like, yeah, but it's 9 points. Like, I'd rather have 2 5-point units, please. And for the same reason, you're 6 points. I'd rather have an NCU and a half, please. I don't want 1 NCU for 6 points. If I happen to have a very specific ability that I'm willing to pay 1 extra point for to go from 4 to 5, and only if I have points spare, then I'll make that leap. You don't buy a 6-point NCU for just a scattergun of bullshit like across the table. You buy it because it has a reliable, repeatable ability which defines your whole list. And he's not going to see competitive play. I will stake it right now before I've even seen the rest of the Lannisters. I don't know what else is coming. I don't know what else they have access to, but he will not be part of Lannister's competitive play because 6-point NCUs do not bring enough value based on that list of things. I'm not saying you need to even have more stuff. I'm just saying 6-point NCUs shouldn't be there. Actually, tell you what, this brings up a whole conversation. I know it's really hard to balance, and I'm not just saying this is an easy job, but every NCU should cost 4 points. End of list. Every NCU and their ability in the game should be balanced around them all being the same cost. That's my opinion.
I could see that. I think it would definitely, because obviously then you value the actual activation at what it is, right? This is the activation that you're paying for, and the ability would then be roughly equatable between all of them, roughly within the theme of the list, of course. Seems they've done that with NCUs, sorry, neutral NCUs, right? They're all 4 points from what we know about, and they're all, let's say, equatable. They're definitely not equatable. Varys, as we've already said, is just really good. The only thing that, by the way, the only thing that Varys does differently to Tywin is that Varys only does 4 of these abilities, because he only has 4 tokens, not 5, and he can never select the lose all abilities one. But he can make an enemy do a panic check. He can give them 3 hits, not 4, alright? He can do healing, okay, different to panicked and vulnerable tokens, right? Not token play. He can draw cards, and he can do a shift. Shift and maneuvering in the game, maneuvering in games like rank and flank games, is always strong, right?
Yeah. I think Varys is better at 4 points.
Yeah, definitely.
Varys is better than him. And War Room, put the quote wherever you want. 15th of the 3rd, 2021, Tywin will not see competitive play in 2021.
I mean, after
we've got to say, not win.
We've got to say, like, after a short period, because everyone will play them competitively in the first tournaments, right? Everyone will. That's what people do, right?
As he's already said, the Oxys will play him to troll me, but
yes, exactly.
But outside of fringe cases, he's not a selection. He doesn't come into the picture. He's not worth 6 points. It looks like they've done really good things in understanding that when you cost 5 points as a combat unit and then you become costing 8 points, you better do so much more. You better be game defining when you cost 8 points. But they seem to have gone, well, he's just better than other people, so make him cost more, which is just like so lazy in design. That is so lazy. Like, because you haven't understood why people are picking multiple NCUs, and that's because they can't buy on-field activations for the price that they can buy NCU activations. And every point really, really matters. So people take 3 NCUs, which now will be a baseline of 12 points minimum. But for a lot of factions, it was anyway. They were playing at 11, so they've squeezed a point there. Or you've gotten rid of NCU commanders, so maybe that's the more significant thing. But people aren't going to pay 6 points, in my opinion. Not good people. Unless the only thing that changes that is if this vulnerable and 4 hits is the only counter in the game to Jorah, who's just decimating people. That's the only reason why anybody would have it.
I can 100% see Tywin coming up in a list pairing for exactly that reason alone. Like, I can actually just straight up see that. If you play against a Jorah list for Dothraki, it means that you can just drop the Tywin and be like, right, well, that solves that problem. Or at least goes a little bit way of solving the problem, which takes us back down to the old Axel versus dogs problem, the old trappers versus dogs problem. Right, you're just introducing a bullet for a problem in the game, and you're not actually addressing the problem. And it's I agree completely, 100% agree. I can see people running Tywin. I will say that I think activations, with the way that they seem to want the game to play, activations might be less important. They might think that activations are less important. We've got to disagree, obviously. We've got to disagree. Activations are always important in these styles of games. The data that we've collected from 1.5, 1.6, even when we were collecting at 1.4, has nearly always shown that when you take roughly equal skilled people, and if you take the vast majority of games, 66% of games, right, were won by the person who had an activation of 1 more or more.
Yeah, that first one more activation is so important. It's the thing that defines whether or not you can play tempo players or not. It defines whether or not you can take the last activation in a given round and the first of the next round. If I have one more activation than you, it is instant, entire denial of you playing tempo at the start of the game, right? And that is not worth what Tywin brings. That says that I can't spend 6 points on an NCU unless I've spammed Poor Fellows, and I'd much rather. Here's what I say: would you rather swap Tyrion into Tywin or your Poor Fellows into Lannister Guardsmen? And for me, it's Poor Fellows into Lannister Guardsmen, and that's not just saying turn this crap unit into an amazing unit. This is one amazing 4-point unit and turn it into another amazing 5-point unit. I can do more with that point. That 1 point, and there's only a few points to spare in any competitive list.
Yeah. Interestingly, there's people talking about how, can it snipe dragons, and that would be really useful. I mean, yeah.
With 4 hits?
I mean, it can kill a dragon that's nearly dead. The actual big thing for me, if we're still talking about sniping dragons as being a win condition, then there's bigger problems, right? There's actually bigger problems.
Yeah, we in trouble. We in trouble. If dragons are still just a problem, then we in trouble. Yeah, we are in trouble, and Lannisters are in trouble if Poor Fellows aren't the way to stop them anymore, because Poor Fellows were a pretty hard. They're definitely significantly our best option against them, and they're not anymore. And when I say a best option, I don't even mean it as a particularly good option, but still.
Lee Taylor knows where it's at in chat. Unless he counters top meta lists, which he probably won't, you think anyone who's ever played the game can tell you Tywin won't see competitive play. So Lee backing you up there, Carlo. Lee backing you up.
Man knows.
Man knows.
Either that or he's listened to me ramble too many times.
Probably that.
But I think man knows.
Man probably knows. Right then, anyway, so that is the Lannisters talked about to death. Right, Carlo gets far too into this, gets far too interested in chatting.
I love Lannisters.
I know, right? And it's not at all things that I've said. Right, which means probably, assumption here, Night's Watch next week, or this week, right? That's what we assume. So Night's Watch here on Monday next week is what we're thinking.
And then the cards come out the week after, right?
And then the cards come out the week after. Yeah.
Nope.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on, because that's
honestly
true.
Genuine question. What comes out the week after? Do they keep talking about stuff, or do they start giving us new commanders? Are we literally going to get drip fed the entire edition, just like week by week at a time? I wonder if we counted up what percentage of things released so far we think we've been shown. How many more weeks would it take us to have seen the entire edition? By that point, you know what? That's actually, this is going to sound crazy, right? This is going to sound so crazy. This is actually the release schedule they should work on, which is every week they give us new updates. I'm not even joking. This amount of things should be updated every single week. So after 50 weeks, you've slowly given us 1/50th of the game a week at a time. And then you're just back to the start again. And you're updating the first faction that's been the longest. Not necessarily the first faction. Whatever's the most broken in the game, you're like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, we're changing this tactics card and this commander and these 2 attachments for this faction. They're updated. See you next week for next week's errata update. That is actually 100%. This is totally just on stream. I've only just thought of it. That is how this game should be continuously updated. But I'm not waiting 50 weeks for them to give us a drip at a time.
I know, right?
But
I think that's pushing it a bit too far. I mean, I wouldn't mind it if it was once a month that they did it. Once a month, the same amount of content, just because changing things once a week is quite hard. They simply don't collect enough data. We don't even collect enough data to change things once a week.
We could, Mickey, if everybody submitted.
True. We could actually, if everyone submitted their games. Submit your games now to songvoiceandfire-stats.com for your, I don't know, there's my promotional bit. Anyway, so let's actually move on to the main, not a steer list. Oh god, I've just closed everything down.
Oh no, Mickey. All right, I'll hold for you. The deck's really, really good. It's probably not Targaryen good, but I think it's not really far off. Lannisters look so strong, and it's very, very obvious to everybody that I'm completely partisan and that I really love Lannisters. And shows how I, despite the fact that I've been playing Baratheons for a long time, I was really uninterested in what they showed for Baratheons. Like until I saw Lannisters and saw like theme and good stuff and things that made me want to play them, I didn't realize how much I saw the Baratheon release and thought, yeah, whatever. You know, like so.
Yeah,
that looks a bit like the World Cup.
it is the World Cup. This is the World Cup, and we've got the semi-finals ready to go. So we've got 4 players left. The semi-finals is here. We see Deoxys versus Larks, a stark mirror. We've definitely not seen enough of those in 1.6. And Tobbo Mott versus Winter is Coming. Targaryen versus Freefolk. Mother of Dragons versus Freefolk. We'll run through the matchups that happened
EU
this week.
versus Australasia. EU versus Australasia.
Yeah. EU versus Australasia. EU versus Australasia. Rip NA.
Yeah.
Absolute rip NA.
I mean, Tobbo Mott is technically an NA qualifier, but yeah, NA, Canada, USA, all nowhere to be seen. Mm-hmm. Not to, you know, I mean, like, it's just interesting. The real strength is of the Australasia region. You know, like Australasia entered like 4 players, right? Like, and they split across both regions, and they basically all qualified, all did well in the World Cup, in the finals too. And you know, I mean, even some of the well-known big names from Australasia didn't even enter. Do you know what I mean? So like, it's not even like they're necessarily the best Australasian players. So I'm really hoping to see more from them as much as possible. My money's still on Deoxys. Yeah. I've always been saying right from the start that Deoxys is going to win it.
Yep.
I think he plays really good aggressive Starks about as well as they can be played. And I think that is where the game's at right now. And it's going to be a super interesting game against Larks, actually.
I think it will be. I mean, obviously, I was playing Deoxys this week, and we'll run through the rounds actually quickly, the games that were played. I played against Deoxys this week, and I'll be honest with you, I thought if I could go into this game and if I could beat Deoxys, I actually think that I would be fine. There's not a single other player in the tournament I was even remotely scared about playing. I'll play Larks, you know, and I'll play Larks. He might beat me. I think, you know, he can beat me. I'm not saying I will lose to him. But I didn't feel worried about playing any other player in the tournament at all. Right? Except Deoxys. Ended up in the same half of the bracket with him, even the same quarter of the bracket. Sad face. Have to play him in the quarters. And yeah, the guy beat me. For those of you that did watch the game, you saw how it went. It was another stark game. There's not much to say about it than that.
Other than your own, which was pretty comprehensive, it was another round of incredibly close games. Like the World Cup is serving up a ton of really, really nail biting games, and that's what it's supposed to be about. That shows that these players are equally ranked, equally skilled. You know, and you know, like point is it's not like NA Canada are getting demolished, not at all. Like it's just at the very last step. Just a couple of victory points, one move, one tactics play, one positional play, which changes the fate of these games. And so, you know, it's really, really fine margins. And I'm really enjoying it. Like the guy, you know, like from the outside watching them play, it's brilliant. Exactly what knockout format, high level play is supposed to be about.
Yep.
Really good stuff.
Definitely. So going up from the bottom, we saw the Mother of Dragons mirror, Tobbo versus Zero Talk, and it ended 12-13. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't streamed, so we don't know how it went, but I'm guessing Tobbo killed one more dragon, because he had 7 more points destroyed, and he probably killed another dragon to get that last point on the last turn, or something like that. Great. Tobbo wins a Mother of Dragons mirror. We went to game 3. I saw Winter is Coming versus Ray, our deep math, which was really good. Tom ran his Harmalist, his free folk spam. It's basically it's the 4 raiders, 3 trappers, and then he runs it with trappers in Jarl, which is better for the free folk. Better for the Mother of Dragons and Stark Mirror. I run it with the Spearwise, which is better against nearly any other game. There's Free Folk Mirror, any of the other game modes, pretty much.
Does anybody play not Mother of Dragons or Starks, though?
No, probably not. I had to run it because of Lannisters. I was going to make the swap and change them out, but I was running Lannisters against the first round. Then I ended up taking my Mammoth anyway. Trolled myself.
Tech.
But I also thought I was going to play against more Free Folk. So, yeah, that's the thing. Anyway. Yeah, Tom beat him fairly comprehensively. It didn't look. It looks probably bigger than it probably is, yeah, it was a fairly comprehensive win for Winter is Coming. He just shut him out of the objectives, and then free folk on objectives against another free folk player. It's game over.
I think this is a classic case of like, I didn't want to like just bet against Ray because like he outperformed everything that I thought he could do with Baratheons in the NA regional. But this is a classic case of Free Folk Mirror, Stark Mirror, whatever it is. Factional mirrors are really, really telling of who knows the faction better, right? Because you know yourself what cards you have, how to play. Everybody's quite comfortable with that. But when you know the faction inside out, you also know its weaknesses. You know what you're going to do to exploit of your opponents. And it's not that surprising. Tom Tyler, Winter is Coming, not a like long time free folk player, but Ray has switched at the last moment to free folk, and that he could take them and pilot them well and win a game against Starks is one thing, and then to end up in a free folk mirror and to come unstuck, I actually think is pretty predictable. Yes. Like that's where a player will come unstuck, is when they're playing a faction that they're not really, really in tune with, and they have to play into the mirror. Definitely. So yeah, that's kind of predictable there to me.
We saw Malleus versus Larks, and I spoke with Malleus after the game. It was an interesting game, to say the least. It was a very interesting game. Did we cast it? I can't remember. Did we cast it, didn't we?
No, I watched it, but George cast it, didn't he? Through sales?
No.
No?
Because it was me. I think I did it. I can't remember. I can't even remember now. When was it? Saturday. Yesterday. Not Saturday, yesterday, that was Sunday. Saturday, who did it?
George cast your game.
Yeah,
George cast your game.
Friday
you
night.
Cast Malleus' game.
Lockerbie.
I watched it. There we go.
Lockerbie
too many
cast
games.
It Friday night. Friday night, and Lockerbie cast it. That was it.
Lockerbie.
So, it was a good game. It was a very good game. I actually think it highlighted 2 problems for me. Right? Problem with Larks. First of all, something that we've said before, Carlo. This is not new. Just not aggressive enough. He's just not aggressive enough. And the fact that he was willing to nearly lose a game says it all to me. And Malleus, I actually think, went too aggressive in that game. And he overextended just a little bit too far to give Larks the opportunity to come in and get that victory point, to get that win. I think that is purely it. Those are the only 2 mistakes I saw all game. But yeah, I
mean, Malleus showed against Brett that he is hyper aggressive.
Yes, he is hyper
aggressive. And I enjoyed watching it. Do you know what I mean? I'm really glad to enjoy it. That's why my money's on Deoxys, because Deoxys is a very, very aggressive player. By comparison to most players playing at this level. Most are playing control styles, most are playing slow styles, most are playing very, very movement and manipulation kind of gameplay. And Malleus has come along, and so has Deoxys, and they've both just gone, you know what? I've got cards, will play. Yep. Got attacks, will make them. Do you know what I mean? Like, and they're just coming out and being like, well, here's a massive play, deal with it. Here's another massive play, deal with it. And that's more exciting, and it's more akin to really, really, really high level ways that more casual players play. whereas most casual players are kept at bay by not really understanding like the way that they're just getting manipulated by really slow, patient players into just like falling into traps. These players, they're playing aggressive without falling into traps, or maybe Malleus walked into one trap, but I like him. I like their playstyle, and my money's still on Deoxys because he's still, in my opinion, the most aggressive player left in the tournament.
I think he's the best player in the tournament. And that's not just because I lost to him, right? I think he is the best player. I think he's shown that he's the best player. He walked relatively easily through the EU regionals, beating pretty much everyone. In fact, he did beat literally anyone of any note. And yeah, he's deserved that. And go and watch my game if you want to. I think George streamed it, if I remember rightly. Yeah. Go and watch the Larks Malleus game.
Aren't we supposed to be saying, "Go Tom"?
Yeah, we are.
Honestly, go UK. Like, I am really, really glad that the UK is doing well. I try to be really what's the word? Impartial. I try to be really impartial internationally because obviously such an important international figure. I try not to over-represent the UK too much or anything like that. But I am super, super glad that the UK scene shows that it's not just like a few people kicking around the country. That actually there's real players really influencing things, and we'll see what comes along come the London GT.
Definitely, I back Tom to beat Tobbo, to be honest, 100%. Like, I want Tom to beat Tobbo because he should be with Free Folk against Mother of Dragons. That should just be like snookering someone, right? That's the matchup you need to just be like smash, right? Get into the final, and then he'll play a Stark player in the final. I called it before. I want Tom to do well. I think a Stark player will win over 3 games. It'll be a big test
for Tobbo here, actually. It's interesting to think that Tobbo has come through a whole series of MOD mirrors. Yep. He's been coming through MOD after MOD after MOD. He played quite a few MOD mirrors, I believe, in his regionals, and then every round so far in the finals has been MOD mirrors. So Free Folk is a very different and very real test. So we'll see what happens.
And there were very few Free Folk at the top of NA as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that I think Tom can probably take it to him. I think Tom should be able to take the game, which will mean Tom is up against a Stark player in the finals, regardless of who wins. It's going to be a Stark, and unfortunately, don't want to stress it too. I think Tom will come second because I think Deoxys is. I'm going to straight up say it. Deoxys is the best player that we know in the international scene right now who's playing. Just straight up, I'm going to say that. I just think he is, and he's playing the best faction.
Larks is sitting there like, what do I have to do?
Larks is also Larks has to go out there and prove it.
All you have to do is win the semi, and then you can shut up, can't you, Mickey?
Yeah, exactly.
Win the semi.
Win the semi,
and Mickey will leave you alone.
Yeah, but it's Starks, right? See, the thing is, we see Deoxys play other factions. We don't see Larks play other factions. That's why I think Deoxys is the best player. I think Larks is probably the best Stark player. Maybe Ariakas is trying to get a second leg in there, but I do think Deoxys is the best player. And regardless of what happens, Tom is going to have to face against Stark. And I think my point is, I think in 3 games, I think that Starks just take 3-game finals away from Free Folk. Because there's 3 different game modes being played. And basically for Starks to lose, it sounds really bad at this point, and I'm not trying to, again, take anything away from Stark players at all, but Deoxys will say this himself. For Starks players to lose, they actually have to get unlucky at the high level. They actually have to get unlucky or massively outplayed. And I'm assuming at this point that the skill level between these players is not significant to massively outplay each other.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
So
I will add one thing though. I'll add one thing to you disparaging Larks and being entirely that Deoxys is going to win this game.
Totally.
Larks has an absolutely impeccable knockout reputation.
He does.
I think this guy steps up to knockout games, steps up to the plate, and really, really performs when the game needs to happen. We can talk about him not being as aggressive as we like to watch, him not being as aggressive a player as we think he should be, and that like more aggression would be better. But point is that he's got like incredible levels of patience and nerve against Bolton Skincare. I was absolutely screaming at the monitor saying, like, do something, you're going to lose, make a bloody play. He just stays still, wins the game. Like, so that takes so much confidence and so much patience. When you throw in that that's in a knockout game, if he loses that game, he's just out. This isn't Swiss. It's not like, oh, I might be losing, but I'll only lose by 1 point. So, like, it still means I'll take second in the event. No, you lose that, you're out, right? So there is that to be said. Lox has never, on stats, won a Swiss tournament. He has never lost a knockout game.
Deoxys makes a good point, though. He beat him in the fight. He beat him in the regionals. Deoxys beat him in the regionals.
Deoxys doesn't win Swiss.
Well, you know.
Don't be too confident, Deoxys.
No, definitely don't be.
I'm still betting on him. I'm still betting on Deoxys, but he can't be overly confident.
I think it's one of those things, though. I think it comes down to the play. I think Deoxys, as long as he doesn't make a mistake, or make a punishable play, I should say. If he makes a punishable play, I think that's it, right? Because Larks will know how to punish it. I think if he doesn't make a punishable play, then it doesn't matter, right? There's nothing that Larks will do, and Larks will end up being, he'll be patient and be patient and patient, and then he'll just lose. Because there is no punishable play for him to jump in on.
It's the game I'm looking forward to most out of, and which is odd because I mean it's a bloody Stark Mirror.
I know, right?
Like how many times we watch Stark Mirrors, but I'm looking forward to this game, and I'll be really interested to see which way it goes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see. Obviously, I do want Tom to win. I think he should win. I bloody hope he beats MOD. But he might not. So obviously, good luck to Tom, and definitely get that British person in the final, 100%. Because I definitely want you there facing off against some Starks. But yeah, you reckon it'll be harder, especially with the Dervishes? Yeah, the Dervishes. You know that combo Deoxys all too well. Anyway, we move on. We'll move on to other tournaments. Any other news happen this week? No.
There's been quite a few new tournaments pop up over this week, actually. So I believe there's a new Spanish event, which is one of the regional events having another knockout final or whatever to determine. It's just got a few players in from what I saw. I think it's maybe like a 4-person event, and maybe one of them will qualify or something like that. 2 of them will qualify, but this is them knocking out their regional, I believe.
Stark, Folk, Lannisters, Stark. So unless I don't know, he's running Great John Howland, fair enough. But that's a Rob Howland, that's a Mance Steyer, and that's a Tyrion High Sparrow. These guys haven't even submitted their lists yet, and they're here. But yeah, that's I'm not going to spend time looking at those.
That's some people who know how to play. Like you can already tell. Like
he's running an 8 and a 9 with Jack and Hagar enemy attachment. I think he might be struggling with that list choice, but we'll see.
Still strong against Lannister, but we'll see. There's also an Australian, is it called BrizCon?
BrizCon. Yeah, BrizCon. Run by Makista, right, I believe. Yeah. He's put BrizCon on, which is an in-person event at the McGravitt Showgrounds in Australia. So hopefully we'll see some turnout for that. I know that Deoxys will no doubt be heading up. He might be anyway. In April. Doesn't live that far away from Brisbane. It's only like a 5-hour train journey, I think.
Since he likes to rock up to little local events and show everybody what's what.
Beat people, yeah. So we've got the Battle of White Harbour, which I did see on here as well, which is I think a digital one. It's run by the guys over at Rotterdam White Scars, who were here earlier. So shout out to them again.
Absolutely.
Which is a Dutch tournament for a bunch of Dutch players there. Magyar Khan, obviously someone that we've had as a relative frequent person on the show. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. They're using 1.7 rules, 1.7 scenarios. But current tactics decks and current cards. Allowing unreleased miniatures and non-final spoilers. So it's really interesting.
Yep.
They're getting 2 weeks to complete each game. Only 4 games. So that's why it's got quite a long running time. They've given themselves a lot of spare time to run the games, which is fair enough.
Yep.
It's
good.
Which is good. I think they might be doing it in person as well. It's actually an in-person event, but run over the 2 weeks, which is really good. I like that. Like a
Yep.
mini league.
It's the modern COVID era.
It is. It's the modern COVID era. And then apart from that, we've obviously got GT. Actually, we'll shout out to Adepticon. Adepticon happening in 12 days. So this is the 27th of March, which is 12 days from now. So the back end of next week. That is run inverted commas by Brett. It's actually run by just trying stuff out. Brilliant, mate. It's fantastic to see people doing it though. I hope it goes well. Obviously, keep us updated. Run by Brett, obviously, but it's not really run by Brett. Technically, the guys over at Simon are using the kind of like supposed to be using the organized play rules for the first time. We'll see if that actually comes about. Simon organized play, trying to get involved with that. We will see how that goes. But we see a load of names we've seen before: the likes of Dakota, Indy John, Stannis S5, Stannis season 5, episode 8. Sorry, Small Council Radio. That'll be Dave Meckler, no doubt. Chad's going, Chad Wallace. Brett's obviously going. We've got Chris from Sunday. We've got Schwindiana. That's the name of it. Haven't heard in a little while. So yeah, loads of names there. So we'll see how that one goes as well. Definitely get yourself signed up and along to that. I'm sure it'll be a great event. Family Time Games have always run good events, so you can guarantee it'll be a fun event.
Absolutely.
They'll probably do something fun.
Keeping the game going for quite a while. Been an important part of, thus where Brett got his name.
Yes. We'll definitely see some fun stuff on the Sunday, right? They'll probably play like a doubles tournament or something silly like that, and like do the mix and match. Which, when I first heard of it, I thought it sounded stupid, but actually it sounds really fun. This is a game of being matched with people, having fun. Anyway, yes, I hope you do get more Dutch people into the game. That would be amazing. Hey, when it gets towards the end, give us a shout out, and I'll try and remember. But yes, I'm saying this on stream. We're going to get one of you guys to come onto Tourney Ground and tell us all about the event and how you managed it in a couple of weeks' time, right? After the first couple of rounds, we'll get one of you guys on, because I think it'll be really interesting to hear what you guys think. And we've never had you on the show before. So there you go. The option's there. Just
Absolutely.
Drop me a message on Discord or drop a message on Facebook or whatever. 100%.
And the Shaman Painter says that he'll be playing in the Rotterdam White Scars game, so in the tournament.
Red Dragon. Cool.
And
awesome.
Turns out everybody's everybody's here.
Everyone watches this. So there we go. Awesome.
Who knew there was going to be an uproar when Mickey said that we were going to be 20 minutes late? Like,
I know, right? That was
here we are, 7 hours later, still on stream.
After 6 hours of you talking about Lannisters. Anyway, we finish it off, of course, with the London GT. Yeah, I know, right? The London GT, as no players currently. What on earth? No players signed up for the London GT? What? No. Massive event, obviously. I know that quite a few of us have already bought my ticket. I've bought my tickets. You're going to stream as well? Awesome. Let us know. 100%. I've already bought my tickets. Carlo, you bought yours?
I am the TO.
So you don't buy a ticket then? What are you doing? No, you should buy a ticket.
Our tickets are getting given away to other people.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
We'll see
because you're not playing, isn't it? It's because you're not playing. You don't need a ticket for it. Yeah. But yeah, definitely get your tickets to the London GT. It should be really fun. Obviously, COVID dependent, but it's probably going to go ahead regardless. We think it's looking pretty good in the UK for events of this kind of nature to go ahead later on in the year, if the roadmap is anything like what they're suggesting. So yeah, definitely get yourself in with that. And if you do buy your ticket before the end of March, there is a chance that you will get a Greyjoy starter set. Earlier last week, Chris announced that Simon are supporting the event for prize support and other things. So it is a Simon
straight
supported.
From Simon. Straight from Simon. Yeah, Greyjoy starter.
Yeah, straight from them. Simon. Carlo's got one of them supposedly for winning that other tournament that he won. Oh, so I say tournament from a giveaway.
Yeah, if yours arrives first, then I'm keeping yours. But
but yeah, 100%. Get yourself involved in the GT, and it's going to be a great event. Get those Lannisters painted up for me. Yeah, Deoxy.
I already have the Lannisters are one of the few things that I do have painted.
See, I've seen them.
And you know what? They're 2021 ready. I've already got 4 units of Poor Fellows for you, mate.
Totally. Right then. Okay then, guys. We will end this week's episode there. Later than usual, as I apologise again. I do apologise. I completely, definitely blame Lannisters for it, and nothing to do with my inability to schedule proper Windows updates. So we will leave it there, and we will catch you all next week, where we will no doubt be going through the week's news, and of course looking at Night's Watch. Probably thinks the only faction left to go.
We're going to see a stone thrower. Pew!
I kind of hope that we do. I also really hope that we don't. Because if the stone thrower is good, then everyone's going to be crying. Oh, I like these conscripts. Anyway.
I feel like they've got to show something in the high point range. Swan Brothers, veterans. I'd like to see something at the low point range. And I'd like to see a war machine. That's my wish list.
Definitely. Alright then. We'll leave it there, and we'll catch you next week, and we'll see if our dreams come true, and we'll obviously bring you more coverage of the World Cup. Take it easy, guys. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.